So once again, thank you everyone for showing up to our session on time today on the Family Day Monday. I know it's a holiday and your schedule's a little bit off, so we appreciate you taking the time to be here. And we want to really just begin the session as we normally do by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We want to acknowledge our ancestors and all of those who toiled without compassion or compensation, and acknowledge the elders and community stewards whose shoulders we stand on as we build and share and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So as I said earlier, we do have a phenomenal panel here today, and I'm going to ask the panelists if they could please introduce themselves. If we could start with Amoye Henry, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, please, sis.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Victor and Blessed, for creating this platform. Thank you to my fellow panelists joining today. My name is Amoye Henry. I am a business consultant, strategist, researcher, many things, but I prioritize and I'm very much interested in the elevation of the Black communities. I have a company called Pitch Better. We conduct market research on the diverse communities across Canada with a specific focus on Black women entrepreneurs. So I'm happy and honored to be here today.
Thank you so much. Janice, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Janice Bartley, and I am the founder of Foodprenuer Lab, which supports underserved and Black entrepreneurs within the food ecosystem space to help them launch and scale products to the market. I am a huge advocate for the food ecosystem, from seed to retail shelves. And for me, this is a passion that I have had. I have had the opportunity and fortune to meet with my peers as well. And I hope to learn from this engagement this afternoon as well. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing and for being here. I think our third panelist is Soniel. He may be having some issues connecting at this time. So we'll, in the spirit of excellence, we're just going to get started and they can just join us as they're able to. So my first question is actually for you, Janice. Are you able to share your experience of developing the thriving model that you have and the foodpreneur ecosystem as it relates to building that here in Canada as a Black woman founder?
Sure, then that's a great question. Thank you. So I've been 3 decades plus as an entrepreneur, existing in spaces where I didn't see people who looked like me. And rather than shying away from it, I learned to embrace that environment and, more importantly, learn. I watched what was going around. I just didn't enter this space and exist. I observed people, I observed how business was done, and more importantly, I observed what was not working for me. And so I use that experience in designing our 2 pathways, which is start and scale, because the key observation I made was the current accelerators that were happening, you know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago and present day as well, but more so back then, was not respective or reflective or of the Black lived experience. And everybody that I've met or had conversation with has said to me, they change when they go into their environments, when they don't see their peers, or they're sharing ideas that people cannot relate to. So imagine trying to explain what a cassava is to somebody who has no cultural reference and understands the benefits of our food. And I constantly tell people that food for us is medicine. Yes, we eat it for sustainability, but it is medicine. It is intricately tied to our mindset, our bodies, and everything else. And so in designing those models, we wanted to be respective of that. And I have to say, we have been able to succeed in that. I just got an email from a participant who finished cohort 2. And the key takeaway that she expressed with me was how safe she felt in an environment surrounded by peers. How safe she felt being in an environment that she could share her ideas without feeling ridiculed. How safe she felt that there were people, advisors that didn't look like her, who respected her cultural identity and they were not dismissive and embraced her and the willingness to support. That is key. And how did we get there? We vetted every advisor that we brought in because we wanted to ensure that they understood the impact and importance of diversity, not being dismissive of the Black experience, the female experience, the male experience, and for them to educate them as well, because this is a new area for them. So it has to be, cross-pollinated, for the lack of a better word.
Wow, there's such a need there that you've broken down. So really appreciated that you are doing that work and you are creating a safe space for our people to thrive. So thank you for that. And Amoye, my next question is for you. I know we've seen you do some really remarkable progressive work and have a lot of impact. So what are some of the challenges or emerging opportunities that you see on the horizon for Pitch Better in Canada or internationally?
Thank you. So we're currently working actually with Google. Google is launching an accelerator program for African women founders. And so they've tapped us to help with recruitment, help with strategy and design, and mentorship and facilitation of their programs, and also bringing some different players to the ecosystem as far as investment solutions and helping to propel businesses forward. And that's sort of in the Africa front. But in Canada, we continue to do research that's meaningful. We're actually working now, thankfully, with the incredible Innovate Inclusion Foodprenuer Lab, and a number of other stakeholders on one of the very first and largest studies on food insecurity in Canada, called Africulture. So it is going to be a study that looks at the Black farmer ecosystem in Canada and how we can have more sovereignty and more accessibility in the space, land ownership, which is seemingly a massive issue and challenge for Black farmers in Canada, and working better with the consumers to be able to have just a direct distribution pipeline, and see what alternatives can be done in the face of this food insecurity crisis. So that's a study that is in the pipeline that we're very proud to be launching very soon.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really exciting work that you have coming. Both ladies, when you get a chance, if you could go ahead and drop your contact details, or at least be able to follow you, check out your websites, if you could drop that in the chat so that people can follow the work that you're doing after this discussion. And Janice, this question is for you. As it relates to the Black foodpreneur ecosystem, what are the gaps and opportunities that you see as well?
Where to start? Well, the most obvious one and the most common one we hear is funding. Not enough funding to support the entrepreneurship opportunities that exist. But it's a larger problem, to be honest, because to Amoye's point, and we've had this discussion, is we have received funding to support entrepreneurships, Black entrepreneurship specifically through the Black Ecosystem Fund, which is great. I long overdue. However, what's really come to light is the infrastructure that is lacking. And so that's where the real problem is, because it prevents from capacity building. It prevents from creating sustainability. It prevents from growing food sovereignty. So, for example, I say to all of you, okay, you know what? I'm going to give you all your pilot's license. I'm going to bring you in on a 12-week program. I'm going to teach you how to fly a plane, which is great. So you learn the skill sets, you learn how to navigate. But the problem is you've never been in a plane, because I don't have a plane to give you to fly. So you are out there telling everybody, listen, I have these destinations that I'm going to fly into, but you can't get there because I don't have the plane and I don't have the money to create planes for you to get to those destinations. And in its simplistic form, those are the challenges that we are facing. So if we want to start growing food, to Amoye's point, we have to have land acquisition, or we have to look at innovative new ways to grow food, which, by the way, is probably where we're going to be looking. If we want to have sustainability, we not only have to educate ourselves, but we have to educate our youth as well, so that we put them in these positions so that they have jobs in the innovation field of agri-tech, biotech, or whatever it is. Because what's happening is, we see the growth in STEM, but my question is, are we creating a brain drain where we're going to fall into the same mistakes where we create all these amazing, excellent Black youth, and they wind up working for other institutions that don't look like us, and here we are again? So that really speaks to the sustainability element, where we have to create opportunities. We have to create we have to open doors so that we have agency over what we are doing. Ownership is essential. And so if we don't start putting in those foundations to have ownership, we will forever be cap in hand asking, can you lend? Can you lend us? Can we borrow? Can we share? And I think we are at a point right now where we need that ownership so that we can showcase how excellent we are, and we have not been given that opportunity.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And Janice, in your lived experience, what would you say are some of the best practices that you feel are essential in your work?
Listen, people always call me the collaboration queen. I'm always looking for a good collaboration, because we can't do it by ourselves. So I'm just going to throw it out there. And when I say we can't do it by ourselves, I mean community-wise as well. We have to collaborate with other entities that may not look like us, but are willing to help expand and grow. One of the things that I always say we have to be very careful is as long as we're building our Black community, we too have to make sure we don't fall to the vices of exclusion, because it goes both ways, right? And so if you're going to build community, all of us are an extension of different races put together, and here we are. And I think we have to live that. We not only have to live that for ourselves, but we have to live that for the future generation that's behind us, and as the millennials, the Zeds, and whatever, the alphas that are coming up behind us, because they're going to be looking to us. We are going to be the elders, as Victor always loves to point out. We are going to be the elders, and we're going to have to pass the torch. And if we take a look at those coming up behind us, they have zero tolerance for inequality. They are the most multiracial generation in the history, which is great. So the question becomes, what are we going to do to ensure we support them as well as we seek agency over existence?
Absolutely. Very serious things to consider with the next generation. They don't have the same tolerance level that we do, or what we've dealt with. And Janice, how do you feel on the same? What practices do you feel are essential in this work?
I think getting together with other organizations and having discussions. Yeah,
we did get that from you, Janice.
Yes, Amoye.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that was Amoye. I'm sorry, the same question.
Can you repeat the question for me, just so I have a fresh frame of reference?
Absolutely. In your lived experience, what do you feel best practices are very essential in this kind of work?
Moving and operating with integrity, and having a sense of, do unto others as you want done unto you. I think we've heard it all so many times. Like, we live like crabs in a barrel, and everyone's trying to get to the top, and stepping on each other is sort of like something that we've seen happen a lot in this community, where we don't operate in the sense of, actual community. So I think one of the fundamental core things we need to strengthen and enrich is just this mindset of abundance, that there are resources and there are opportunities that we can all get access to. And it's easier to get access to and amplify them when we work together, and more consolidated and in solidarity, as opposed to working against each other. So in the spirit of collaboration, that's I think how we should operate. And that's kind of how we've done things from the beginning. We've collaborated with the corporate organizations to community-based organizations to individuals to grassroots, because it's the best way to get things done and to move as fast as you can. So I think collaboration is certainly key, operating with integrity, operating with a mindset that, short-term wins will lead to sort of long-term success. And so kind of take our time, not be as short-sighted as, sometimes we tend to be, have the kind of long-term game in mind. And I think that has been, pivotal to us being able to achieve certain things at the state we're at right now.
It makes a lot of sense. And of course, both your answers were really in alignment with collaboration and building community. So I really appreciate that. And Amoye, I know that last year that you did some groundbreaking report on the founders. Can you share a little bit about that work and let us know what came out of that?
Yes, so that was in 2021, actually. We didn't have any research last year. I took the year off, I had a baby. So myself, Sarah Juma, Patience Adamu, Chantel Craig, and a number of other brilliant Black women, we came together and we launched the first and largest open market study on Black women entrepreneurs in Canada. We were able to hear from 1,500 plus Black women across the nation, from as far as British Columbia to as east as Nova Scotia, around their challenges in scaling their businesses, but also their successes. And when we say open market, this was a study that, there were no preconditions to participating in the study. You didn't have to join a pitch competition. You didn't have to join, an organization. You literally just joined these focus groups and sort of expressed the challenges financially, socially, culturally, economically in scaling businesses and sort of what that looked like. And this led to a letter of support from Chrystia Freeland, who's the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance. Tons of support from Minister Ahmed Hussein's office and a number of other key things. We were featured in CBC, Globe and Mail, and it's produced or yielded visually critical dashboard of Canada that maps out Black women-led businesses that are currently raising capital for their companies. So not only do we actually conduct research, but we actually find tangible ways for the general population to be able to absorb and understand the context and the layers of said research. So it's not just sitting in some report that you don't even touch, that just sits there, it's arbitrary and not necessarily impacting culture. So we do this research and we find dynamic ways to feed it to our culture in a way that they can digest it. So that's where we developed this map where you can kind of go and hover over the map, different regions of Canada, and see the founders that participated in the study. So similar to our research study with the food insecurity, which is called Africulture, we are going to be working with the farmers that participated in the study to develop an app that will operate similar to sort of Uber. And this app was created by a brilliant Black woman. And the app, I will share the name of the app in the chat, but the farmers will have the ability now to engage with the consumer base. And we as consumers can download this app and engage the farmers and say, look, I need to order 10 tomatoes, some potatoes, some, whatever produce, identify the quantities, work through the logistics channels, and then be able to directly support these Black farmers using this app that will be based and rooted in this research. So I don't know if I answered the question, but that was that's what Founders was. I just wanted to link it back to the food insecurity, which is why we're here today. So we built this database, and our goal is always to use research to shift the culture in tangible ways. So it's not just affecting policy and, sitting in some government minister's office, but it actually touches the people as well.
That's remarkable. As I said, it was a really groundbreaking information in there. It was really beautifully done. I love how like all the collaboration across the whole board. I just want to draw everyone's attention to the chat because our sister Sarah Juma has dropped the link in there where you can find it, foundhers.ca. So I encourage everyone to definitely take a look at that when they can. Save the link. And this question is for you, Janice. As it relates to structural racism, anti-Black racism, and systemic discrimination, what best practices or tools or models do you feel are genuinely advancing justice for foodpreneur space in Canada?
I think as I've kind of looked at the landscape, we see certain organizations that are starting to set standardized pillars, for the lack of a better word. And I think when I look out, that is what I'm leaning into, where I'm looking at what are organizations doing and how I can help support those organizations in terms of getting those messages out. I mean, everyone's bias is different. Everyone's discrimination has been different. And so for me, I'm not looking for a blanket purpose. I'm looking at, okay, so what structural tools are now existing that we can now A, have conversation, or B, change a system that has not been working for us. And sometimes you have to completely get rid of it. And other times you're tweaking it. So I think for me, I always think the approach, you have to be very careful in the approach, because everybody thinks because you're a person of color, you want to dismantle everything. And that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes we want to upgrade. Sometimes we want to innovate. And sometimes, yes, we want to just, you know what, this is not working. We're going to tear it down. We're going to start anew. So I can't sit here and say that I have all those tools. I really lean on the peer community to see what they are doing and kind of look for best practices and incorporate that into what I'm doing. And it's through conversations with Amoye, Victor, Ryan, and my other peers that is what informs me, because there's an assumption that people think because I run Foodpreneur, I know everything. No, I don't. How do I learn? I learn through my participants. I listen to their stories, and I've always done that. As a matter of fact, how I came to start Foodpreneur was by listening to people and having a greater understanding of where the gap was. I saw the gap, but just because what I'm seeing is not reflective of everybody else's experience. So I had to honor their stories, honor those frustrations, and find a way to say, okay, you know what, how can I best support or change what we don't like, what we're seeing?
Very good, thank you. And I know that Janice touched on this a little earlier when we talked about the next generation coming behind us. But Amoye, how important do you feel eldership and intergenerational collaboration is in the Black communities across Canada with the work that you do?
It's everything. We, as Janice humbly stated, we don't know everything.
Knowledge, but everyone was on board with
Please.
The idea that you're coming to a place that, you know, you need to have some reverence for, but it was
Moderator. Thank you. Go ahead, sorry.
So as Janice humbly stated, we don't know everything, and thank God we don't know everything, because I think that would be too much of a burden to carry. I actually sometimes like to dwell in ignorance in some regards, because it just gives me the ability to learn and adapt, and not kind of have a stuck mindset where I think I know everything. So I love to learn from our elders. And I think the key to having, you know, intergenerational knowledge sharing is to open up channels of communication such as this, that, you know, things that Victor has been doing for years, opening up platforms, breaking down barriers to information and access. I read a quote somewhere, I wish I could remember it verbatim, but it was like, a conversation between two people is just a conversation, but like a conversation between the community is like legacy building, right? And so I love that we have spaces to do this and open up these platforms. I think one of the things that we have to always bear in mind is documentation, and finding, you know, legitimized ways to continue to document our efforts and our work, whether it's through video, whether it's through writing, whether it's through reporting. historically speaking, as African people, we tend to transmit our information verbally and, in the communal spaces. And then we have this lack of registered information that can sort of show a thread of what has happened, what has taken place. And I think it's important now for us moving forward, and as we grow and expand our legacies, our communities, to continue to document these experiences, write reports, say, I was here, I was alive, back up your fellow brother and sister in spaces where they're advocating for or lobbying for information access or sharing information that they've gathered, and continue to build our own archives and our collective information systems. Just as our mentors, our elders never had the chance to, we can now sort of take the baton and say, look, we know how to operate in our oppressors' language. We know how to work with the colonizers. Let's talk to them in their language, but also develop our own systems and our tools to navigate for our upcoming, not ancestors, but our upcoming generations.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know, Janice, you touched on the next generation a little bit, but did you have anything more to say about the eldership and working with the various communities?
To Amoye's point, the fact that we are not documenting this, and I mean from a digital standpoint in two ways: collecting data, but as well as in hindsight, I think when the Black Ecosystem Fund was created, I think a documentary should have been started from that process. Because to Amoye's point, this is what we have to take back to the generation behind us. They need to see, this is what the work looked like. This is what the conversation had to be had. These were the challenges. These were the struggles, but we overcame them. And I think that is the issue, is that as much movement as we are seeing, and we've done some phenomenal things. For example, the endowment fund, the Black Ecosystem Fund. We don't have something tangible to show them and say, listen, man, this is what 3 o'clock in the morning looks like as an entrepreneur. This is what a no looks like versus a not yet. This is what pushing the rock uphill when you just want to give up. And every morning, like a dog with a bone, you cannot let this thing go. And I'm speaking from personal experience. And I see Amoye nodding her head. So I know she can relate to this. Because for us to get where we are, please, by no mistake, think that this was an easy ride. The background story to Foodprenuer Lab is a frustrating one, but yet I am here. And I'm sure Amoye can say the same thing. Ryan, Victor, we all have the same stories. But what was the common denominator? We are passionate about what we believe. We see the excellent in our people and our community. And we are obsessed with not opening doors, kicking doors, create pathways for others to follow behind us. And we don't take that for granted, because we are visionaries. We see the potential. We know what we're capable of. And here we are running around saying to everybody, hey, listen, let's get our act together. We can do this. We are smart people. Listen, we've created so much with so little. Of course, we're geniuses. We have to realize that for ourselves.
Absolutely. Genius is to say, to take it lightly. And it's true, sometimes you have to toot your own horn and recognize, because as you said, it's not being televised and documented sometimes. So I appreciate that comment. And this question is for you. In terms of Black leaders in Canada or community stewards that have paved the way for both of you in the work that you do, are there any ancestors or living elders that you accredit your inspiration from?
Thank you so much for that question. Everybody that my ancestors would be my parents who sacrificed, didn't know, not my ancestors, but my direct inspiration would be like my parents who sacrificed and didn't know what they were coming to and what they were bringing their children into, but they did it anyways. They did it alone. They did it scared. That's my biggest inspiration. I have so many leaders and people that I could look up to. To name names, I would leave people out and offend folks, so I'm not even going to go there. There are just so many people doing the work. I'm inspired by you, Blessed. I'm inspired by so many people who are even in this call, Maat, Melissa, Sarah, of course, Ryan, my brother Ryan. Like, we're all vessels of inspiration for each other. In terms of Black leadership, I think leadership is something that I would just say everybody's inspiring me in these days. I look at somebody like Janice as a trailblazer. Viola from Nova Scotia, Miss Viola, her last name escapes me at this moment, but she was kind of the Canadian Rosa Parks, I think she's called. That story, yes, Viola Desmond, that story is, completely inspiring and transformative. What is his name again? Jimi Hendrix's grandmother out in Vancouver, BC, the creator of that restaurant, and she was very fundamental to building an ecosystem and a community in Black Vancouver. Jean Augustine, absolutely. Like, there are so many incredible people that we get to literally pick up the phone and call and say, oh, Auntie, I need advice. Oh, I'm going through this. So tons of leadership that we can lean on, that we can support. But I also think leadership is within us. And we also have to take accountability as future ancestors and understand the legacy that we are also building, that the torch that we have to carry as well, and conduct ourselves as leaders as well. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely. Well, that was a very empowering message. Thank you for that. We really appreciate that. And Janice, same for you. Who would you say you draw your most inspiration from?
Well, I'm going to take a page out of Amoye's book and not call out anyone specific for fear I leave anyone out. So that good call. But I have to say my grandmother on my mother's side was a huge influence. She lived to be 101. But what struck me about her was she ran her own shop. She had her own shop. She was the first entrepreneur in our family. And that boggled my mind, because if I think about it and I take myself back then, I can't even begin to imagine what that must have looked like, and yet she did it. Not only did she do it, she had 12 children to look after as well. So I'm sure there was a necessity built in there. Nonetheless, my grandmother taught me how to do math at a very young age. And so I started making the connection. I was like, how come this elder woman is so good at math? New multiplications up into her 90s. Smart as a whip. And so that is where I made the connection. To Amoye's point, my mother, she, for me, was a role model, because as a West Indian parent, man, ruled with a firm hand, make no mistake about it. And at times, I absolutely despised it, because I could not see the benefits of the future of the person I was going to become, the woman as becoming. But let me tell you, I cling to that. I tell her thank you every day, because that strength to deal with whatever is in front of us and ahead of us, that has to come from somewhere. And so that is the legacy as well of, Jamaica's a very matriarchal system. We always joke that we run things, right? But at the same time, we step up to look after and do whatever is necessary. And so when that is ingrained with you, and you pick up from one geographic area and you go into another one, you still carry those tools. You still carry that inner leader inside of you, because that is all you've known. So to Amoye's point, every person in this session is a leader. The question is, are you tapping into it, and will you tap into it? And for me, Jean Augustine, that was the other one. I love that woman. I love that woman. So thank you.
She has come up on quite a few panels this month as a source of inspiration that we actually need to tap into more when we talk about the living elders that we need to appreciate and utilize while they're here. So yeah.
And I was gonna quickly add to that. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to go and see her documentary. It needs to be seen. it really needs to be seen. I had the pleasure of going to the viewing last week, Saturday, and it was time well spent. And so again, goes back to that is essential. Not only because she's a first, but because of everything that happened in order for her to become the first. And so these are the stories that we have to get into our public schools, into our youth, for them to understand, like, listen, there is no smooth road. There is no straight road. Every road's crooked and it has potholes, but you build, you make better, and you keep it moving. Just keep it moving. So yeah.
Keep going, for sure. This question is for both of you. Amoye, you can answer first. Many of our leaders, both nationally and internationally, have raised awareness of how rest can be a form of resistance. As a leader, how essential do you feel self-care and your well-being and mental health is for your work?
Yeah, if you don't rest, your body will do it for you. Sometimes at a time when you're not even prepared for, you're not planning for. So I think I totally agree with that. Rest is resistance, and it is, in a sense, our only defense against what we're up against. We're not just forming businesses, forming collaboratives, and living day to day. We're operating in our skin. We're operating with the hair on our head and moving and walking through this world that sometimes doesn't necessarily like us. And so we have to be armed and ready for that journey every single day. And so I think as a mother now, I have to be able to compartmentalize and decide what is a priority for me and what's not. And motherhood has shown me very quickly, some things, just let it go. And one of the things that I recognize constantly in my path is that you need to have balance. So as much as you want to, work and work and work and work, and as Black women, as Black people, we're always constantly trying to work. There's always a new milestone to achieve. Rest is also a milestone. Rest is also a blessing, right? And to be able to dedicate some time in your life and in your day to connecting with yourself, connecting with your God or your, spiritual being, that's priceless. So I think as everybody on this call, I would hope that we're finding ways to implement more self-care practices into our day-to-day, and schedule it in the same way you'd schedule in a phone call or a business meeting, or you schedule in your lunch. Schedule your time to rest and be at one with yourself, because that is it's something that we need and we deserve, just like everybody else.
Absolutely. Everyone needs it, and it's a matter of prioritizing it. And Janice, how do you feel on the same topic as rest as a form of resistance?
I think it is integral to the mental health of every human being. Not if you're an entrepreneur. The title of what you do, it doesn't matter. It really is about shutting out the noise. And interestingly, in North America, we don't like silence. Okay? Silence is a bad thing, because then you're going to hear yourself thinking, God forbid, right? And so for me, that self-care is essential. And my self-care is, I like a very Zen environment. People who know me, if you're chaotic, you get 20 minutes of me and then I'm gone. I can only handle so much. Not to say I don't love your company, but that's how my mind works. And so for me, and we're all guilty of this, we know how important self-care is, but sometimes we don't take it. And I'm guilty of that. It happened to me December. I got the flu and I burnt out. The flu was the star that lit the match. And then I just did not have the energy. And what I realized, because that's the other thing, when you're in self-care, that quiet time, you have to be brutally honest. I always talking about lifting the veil. it's that time where you start asking yourselves, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? What could I have done better? What did I do better? Did I treat this person in a manner that's respectful, that if it were to be shown on camera, I would be proud to say, yep, that was me. Those are all the things that quiet time, or what we call self-care, allows us to do. And so for me, that is very important. Not only that self-care is also rejuvenation, because it allows you to disconnect, unplug, disassociate, and then come back refreshed so you can continue the journey. Because if you're burnt out, you cannot lead, you cannot create, you cannot imagine, you cannot innovate, you cannot love, because people annoy you. So all these things are essential to self-care. It's not a should I, it's must I. And it's not a matter of must, it's when can I? And we have to create it. So for example, every 6 days, except for the month of February, because it is Black History Month, I've allowed myself to go beyond that. But after Black History is finished, every 6 days I go back, that's rest. And rest is not carrying my phone around with me everywhere. Taking off my Apple Watch so I don't know that a text has come in, because it doesn't matter. Not having notifications on, I turn them off. It's not that I don't love y'all, it's that I don't need to hear from y'all 24/7. Okay, so we must establish some boundaries, because when I'm doing well, I can come to you and serve you well, and it becomes exponential. So that's my contribution.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. It was like that tough love is very true. We need to take the time. I think if anything, instead of being offended, people need to take a page from your book and set those boundaries and honor those boundaries. Like both of you said, you really can't show up as your best self if you don't take that time. And you can be a much better version of yourself if you would just take that rest. So I really appreciate your answers. This is my last question for both of you. In terms of peoples of African descent in Canada, what are some of the ways that you feel that we can connect our models, the initiatives that we have going on, our businesses, to Mother Africa, and connect like on the global Black diaspora? Amoye, if you want to go first.
Wow, that is such a loaded question. Okay, let me just read it again, because I think Victor posted it. All right.
How we can work globally, the African diaspora on a global scale.
Mm-hmm. So when I say our models and our initiative, when I see our models, our initiatives, I think in the context and the framework of the Western approach. And I'm actually actively trying to dismantle some of that within my own self and my understanding of what works and what doesn't work and what's right and what's not right. I currently,
but let me clarify that we do mean ours. So the ones that we're trying to rebuild, how could we take those new models and initiatives and really connect the diaspora? So
I took it as that, but I'm saying my own internalized system of model and what's a business and what's this paperwork and like I not no disrespect to the question. I love the question. I'm just saying I'm trying to reframe in my mind what is an operative system. What works for me there may not work for me here. I currently do actually live in Ghana, Accra, Ghana, half of the year when it's cold, because I'm not gonna catch no wicked wind on my neck. But I think collaboration again is key, but doing the research and looking at organizations and people that are doing the work that is a mirror of essentially what I'm doing. So it feels like something that could work. So I think coming back to Ghana in 2012 was life-changing for me. Actually, my stepfather passed away, and I, came back to help facilitate a lot of his transition, and it actually taught me and showed me a lot around just the way how they're very organized. As much as we kind of look at their systems and their ways as very different, they're actually quite organized and regal in the way that they do things, and there's a lot of honor in a life and in somebody's journey. And so I think paying attention to what the work that they're currently doing, by doing the research, by buying a ticket, flying out, and actually spending time and learning, and not necessarily trying to come in, bring my westernized ideals and concepts and my work to something that may not necessarily be advantageous for them, right? Because I think what we need to frame our mind around is this idea of trade and not aid, right? Because I don't want to come here and assume that I need to come and bring my systems and help you and help further your cause, when what if you're perfectly fine with how you're doing things? I rather come and buy from, employ, or create an opportunity to expand upon what, sometimes they have going on, and then document it. Right. So I've been actually traveling across Africa with my infant son. And I've gone to about 7 African countries in the past, 6 months or so. And my recent country that I went to was Tanzania in East Africa. And I actually connected with the locals, and I actually asked them questions, and I actually did research, and I recognized some of the growing industries, and I published an article on my experience in Tanzania, right? Which some people just write it off as a travel destination. I'm like, no, it's a hub for oil. I'm sorry, not oil. It's a hub for tea and coffee and rubber and all of these different industries that we as diaspora people could actually be purchasing, right? And looking at food processing and developmental engines around how do we help make this like a growing ecosystem for them, but also for us. I'm also scheduled to go to Ivory Coast when my visa comes through, because Ivory Coast is also a hub for a lot of great things. And we sometimes discount the contributions of the Francophone African countries just because of that language barrier. But that is also an incredible hub for a lot of movement. In Senegal as well, like there's the different industries and different work that's being done there, but we're kind of just focused on proximity or what's splashy or what's popping in social media. So I said, F that, I'm going to book a flight. I'm going to go and see it for myself and connect with the locals, connect with business people that are doing things. And I've actually actively started doing the research and publishing business opportunities for diaspora investors. So I think there's 2 ways to it. It's either go and see it for yourself, connect with some people, form, real strong relationships and understand where people are coming from. Don't try to force your Western ideals and systems on them, but try to find ways to integrate, maybe your structures and your ways in which work for you into your approach that might make their life easier. And then the second thing is, be prepared to spend. Don't complain when it comes to investing in African businesses, because we're so quick to go and buy and go and, we're going to Miami or going to New York, and we're not questioning the cost of such and such and such. So let's not question the cost of our African brothers and sisters, businesses or things that they need to survive. Sure, if you're getting gypped, you're getting gypped, but also pay attention, to the ways in which we use our dollar to help them as well. So that would be my contribution.
That's huge. Very valuable. So you're already doing the traveling and highlighting this information. So is this something that we would see through your website, through a blog or your Instagram? What's the best way to follow along and capture that information that you're gathering as you travel? Oh, you're muted, sis.
Sorry. So I actually, I have been writing articles. I am going to be contributing to a major platform very soon, because they actually saw my writing and were like, wow, we need to hear more from you. But I will just share 2 articles that I've recently done. And if you guys are very interested in learning more, you can certainly follow me on Instagram. Amoye Henry is my Instagram and also my LinkedIn. But I am prioritizing understanding businesses in the innovation spaces. So businesses that have sort of a tech or a component that can scale. right? Because I think that that's also a massive opportunity for job creation and being able to have intertrade governmental discussions when they're looking at businesses that have certain margins that, you know, can create impact for a large group of people as opposed to just, you know, very small businesses. So this is what kind of I'm focusing the high growth business opportunities across the continent. So yes, I'm available on Instagram, or not available, but you can find me on Instagram, and there's my information.
Sounds good. So Instagram and LinkedIn, thank you so much for all those details. Janice, how do you feel that we can connect the diaspora in this initiative?
Everything that Amoye said, and I'm done. No. She pretty much tapped on all the elements, which is, when I step back and look at it, for me, it's through food. And it's interesting because we know about our food and we really don't know about our food. That's the interesting takeaway for me. And so because Foodprenuer Lab has these two pathways, I've had the opportunity to learn more about our ancestral foods, our countries, and how diverse we are and how similar we are at the same time, and how we use those foods in different ways. And so I've seen the beauty of, you know, Soniel. I've seen, I forget the name. Trust me, I've had my fair share of exposure, but my takeaway is, oh my God, I didn't know that. So again, the disconnect. So if we have the disconnect over here, then the gap is the education. And so we need to use the education to do a number of things, not only to inform within our own community, but to also engage in conversation outside of our communities. So for example, Amoye was talking about trade. Trade is great, but if we can't trade with others, if we don't have the infrastructure for us to create opportunities to trade, okay? So let's build that so that we can expand internationally and globally. And my frustration is, you can't throw out funding mechanisms where the benchmarks we can't reach. My constant complaint is, if I had $100,000 in revenue, I wouldn't be applying to your fund, quite honestly, because for me, that is phenomenal. I would be looking for something else. And so we have to look at the processes that are in place and how to effectively change them so that we can now showcase, highlight the diaspora. And it's beautiful. Once you start tapping in, I'll be honest with you, you no longer look at the North American model because it is so rich. I've literally pivoted away from the North American branding of bling and flash, and this is what you have to have. And I've really started focusing on, what does investment look like? What does true investment look like? Whether it's boots on the ground, because to Amoye's part, if we don't go to these places and see for ourselves, we become vulnerable to the propaganda that we've been taught over the last, I can only talk for myself because I'm 5 decades and plus, okay? But we have absorbed and taken in that propaganda without questioning or royalty. And that is saddening, because Amoye's point is, you literally have to go somewhere to realize that there's an abundance of X, Y, and Z because we didn't know, because we weren't educated, because we were taught that we were less than and we had nothing to contribute. So I really think that grassroots elements, the boots on the ground, the stories that Amoye is going to bring back from her trips is essential. Not only that, we are at a pivotal moment right now, and I don't know if a lot of my peers realize it, but on the whole, the community on the whole, I'm not sure if they realize it, where we now have significant investment in what we are doing. We are now having the spotlight put on our work, our nonprofits, the men and women that are soldiers that are out there, that are doing the groundwork, that are looking and ensuring that our youth are protected, educated, informed, and created pathways for their future. That's never happened before. So to your question is, we can't pivot in the next 4 years or 5 years to make this difference. This is a long-term commitment. This is not come in for 4 years and fade out onto the next. What you are seeing here is a community that is committed to building those pathways, anchoring those roadways, and making sure there are enough lanes for everybody to ride, drive, run, skate, whatever it is you want to do. And so I think for me especially, I'm constantly saying to people like it's the first time, hey, you do realize we've never had this before, because I think there's a complacency where we just take things for granted and we just figure it's going to sort itself out. It's not. It's not. And one of the things that I realized was I had to have purpose. The community has to have legacy. I don't have to have legacy. The community has to have legacy. So I need purpose to drive that legacy. And in doing that, this is why, you know, I talk to the victors of the world. I talk to the Amoyes. I talk to Ryan. I talk to other organizations to find out, okay, what are you doing? So that I'm not encroaching on something that you're doing extremely well and repeating that. I am there to enhance and contribute and help you, and vice versa. So as loaded as your question is, I think we have to recognize that it's a larger undertaking. But I always say to my entrepreneurs, just let's take it slice by slice. Let's not look at the entire pie or we'll choke. So just let's start with the slices, and then we'll just take it piece by piece. As we build, we expand. So that's my view on that.
Thank you. Well, this was incredible. I don't think I've ever been so pumped up to come to Africa before. And I think you guys did a great job in sharing on all the valid points. We had a lot of praise and applause in the audience. So I just want to take the time to thank our panelists that were here and participated. Thank you so much for that. And as you know, that we always like to start on time and end on time in the spirit of African excellence. So again, thank you both of you. And I encourage everyone to save the chat so that you can go back and check and follow their work. And we want to end the session the same way that we began, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on, and acknowledge our ancestors, all of those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We want to acknowledge the elders and our community stewards, whose shoulders that we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and our sovereignty. Once again, thank you everyone for coming out, and have a great day.